Welcome to the Tech Simple podcast. Independent insights into the latest AV technologies, as well as tips and best practices to optimise AV solutions for modern workplace and learning environments. Here are your hosts, David and Jonathan from Konnectus AV Consulting.
Welcome back, everyone, and welcome, Dave, to the Tech Simple podcast.
Hey, Jonathan. Yeah, thanks, mate. Good to be here again.
This is actually part two of a two-part series. Last episode, part one, we were covering network AV devices and the considerations around their implementation. So if you haven't listened to part one, go and listen to part one now and come back and join us after that one. But what are we covering here in part two, Dave?
Yeah, definitely jump over and listen to part one, because this won't make a lot of sense if you don't do that. Look, it's networked AV devices, as you say, but we're really going to be focusing on the benefits of doing that in the first place. Okay, so this little episode will be divided into three. Basically, the first section we're going to talk about remote monitoring and management and the benefits there when you have your devices on a network. The second part will be all about analytics and utilization, looking to optimize utilization of the AV devices. And lastly, we're going to get into kind of getting the most out of your fleet of assets, your AV fleet of assets, because on day one, you're buying a certain device, but after maybe 1 year, 2 years, there's been so many updates from a manufacturer in terms of software, firmware, feature improvements, and you want to be taking advantage of that. So that's what we're going to be covering in the third part. Jonathan, why don't you tell us all about remote monitoring and management?
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is this is not a new concept. It's been around for a long time, actually.
True, very true.
But why is it more attractive now? There are a few things that have changed over the last 2 to 5 years. One of the key ones is cost, actually. The devices that connect to the network have drastically come down in cost. So it's a lot more cost effective to deploy them. The other key thing is people actually know what they're doing with them now as well. In the early days, everybody in the industry was a little bit green, didn't quite know the tricks and the tips and the pitfalls. But the industry as a whole has really excelled, and they're very experienced at deploying them now. And the last one actually is, our colleagues in the IT departments are much more open to actually accepting AV devices connecting to their networks. So those trifecta of things really makes all the difference when we're talking about remote monitoring and management. So now that we kind of know that, well, what's actually the purpose, and why do we want to do it? And, the big benefit is changing from a reactive service and maintenance mindset into a proactive model. Now, this is a big shift, and it actually has a big impact on people using the space. Now, let me give you an example. You're a person, you're working into your office, you're having a meeting, you've had a busy morning, you're trying to jump into the meeting room, and the thing doesn't work. Now, all of a sudden, you've got stress, you don't know what to do, you're scrambling around, you're trying to find a meeting room that works. Yes, you end up logging a ticket, and in the next few weeks, somewhere down the track, someone comes and fixes it, right? Well, that's the reactive approach. The proactive model is, I walk into that meeting room, and it's actually already fixed, and I didn't even know that there was an issue. And the way that can happen is through the monitoring. So a centralized system tells the AV or the people responsible for the room, hey, there's an issue in this room. We need to actually actively send someone out to fix it before people start using it. Or if it's going to take a long time, we need to rebook those people into somewhere else that is working. And you know what? At the end of the day, what does this mean? We can send the tech out or get the thing repaired if we need to send someone at a cost-effective time, not outside of hours. Or actually, more likely, these days, you can actually fix those problems remotely. So you might actually reboot the device, or you might reload a piece of code or software, and that can actually be done outside of the room remotely. And what this really does, Dave, is at the end of the day, it makes your support and maintenance costs lower. And that's the real takeaway there. You've got happier users, and you got lower support and maintenance costs.
Yes, I'm just, looking at that operating line on the P&L that says service and maintenance for AV, and if that's decreasing year after year because of, a proactive approach, that's the dream, isn't it? All right, well, topic 2 is around utilization and trying to get more from these AV assets. So first of all, we need to understand how they're being used, and to do that, if you've got these devices all on a network, you can pull data, you can pull information. So for example, there might be a meeting room with a camera in it, and that camera, it can tell you how many people are in that meeting room at a certain time. And then that can be cross-referenced with maybe a room booking system, and you can see who booked the room, when, and how many people were in there. And all of a sudden, you've got a rich tapestry of data which you can start to analyze. Another example might be sizes of rooms. You're seeing a lot of people in the organization using small rooms as opposed to large rooms. Why is that? You could go and analyze that data a little bit further and start asking questions, and that'd be really interesting information, I think, for maybe a real estate division in an organization to know, because, big meeting rooms which aren't being used are hugely expensive on a footprint, especially if you're in a CBD area or some expensive building. And it's all about optimizing real estate at the end of the day for those departments. Well, what about a workplace team? They really want to make sure that the people in the business and the clients that come and visit are really enjoying the technology, and finding that it's a great experience and there's benefits to using it. So if we can sort of track how the technology is being used, what technology is being used more than something else. If something's not being used and we know that, we should find out why. If we don't need it, we should replace it with something else. Or maybe we need to make tweaks. Maybe we need to add features to it or remove features from it. That data can be so powerful, and it can just help you make some much better decisions, to get that optimal outcome and better return from assets. And speaking of better returns from assets, this is the last topic, Jonathan. I'll let you talk about that one.
Yeah, so you touched on it in the introduction there, Dave, and I think the big thing that we need to consider here is when you buy a product today, it gets updated. It's software-based. And with those updates, with those software updates, come new features. So if I purchased the product 12 months ago or 18 months ago, it releases new software updates regularly. And we could actually be benefiting from those updates, the people using the spaces, and it doesn't actually cost any money. But the way that you do that, I don't want to have to run around to every single room and put a USB stick in and update the device.
Imagine.
Imagine you've got 1,000 rooms to do that for. So that's kind of the key behind, having these network devices. Now all of a sudden, we don't have to go into the room. We can do it remotely, and we can push those updates, and we can maximize the use of those devices, and we can also benefit from that continual improvement that the manufacturers are completing these days without having to expend funds for new equipment.
It's a proactive approach, Jonathan, and you're not leaving money on the table. If you paid a couple of grand for a device a year ago, why not get more and more value from it through these updates which are coming free? Why wouldn't you? It'd be crazy not to. So having everything on a network and having software systems, software platforms rather, that can give you sort of a single dashboard of information is so beneficial. And that's kind of what ties all this together. It doesn't magically happen just because you connect Ethernet cables to devices. There is some software platforms that need to bring it all together. We won't go into that in all its detail right now. I think what we can do just to give value is to introduce maybe 3 good ones that are worth exploring. So Crestron XIO Cloud is one product. Another one would be q-sys Reflect, and another one which is a good Aussie company, so we want to support Australian here. The product is Intermesh, so go check that one out. That's a summary. So I hope you've enjoyed the 2-part series here about networked AV devices, why they're important, how to kind of implement them, and some things to look for, and really how to get the the biggest benefits once you do go down that path.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Tech Simple podcast. To like, share, or discover more episodes, head over to Spotify. If you'd like to talk to us about AV in your workplace or learning environment, book an initial discovery call with David or Jonathan at konnectus.com.au. And remember,